Psychological barriers, trading discipline, emotional control, and the ability to act on what the tape actually shows rather than what your emotions want it to show. These are the true keys to sustainable success. Self-examination to confront your own weaknesses. The breakthrough comes when you recognize that your market results are ultimately a reflection.
Helps me get my money right to achieve my ambitions, like saving for a better sleep.
Loosen that grip.
With SoFi, I earn more money on my money and pay no account fees. Plus, I'm investing in my game. SoFi can help fund all your ambitions, no matter how ambitious. Bank with SoFi to score a higher APY in an epic wealth bonus. SoFi, get your money right.
Every premature exit, every ignored stop loss, these aren't market problems, they're self-regulation problems. When you shift your focus to developing this inner mastery, your outer results begin to transform in ways that no tech market battles are fought within, rather than on the charts. Type "inner game matters most" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you have reached this critical insight on your trading journey. As we wrap up today's exploration of what it truly takes to catch those life-changing market trends, I hope you're walking away with a fundamental shift in how you approach your trading journey. Remember, this isn't about perfection, it's about patience. Your analysis suggests a major move is forming. I created this channel precisely to share these deeper market insights that go beyond the typical technical analysis you'll find elsewhere. If you found value in these ideas about patience, trend recognition, and psychological mastery, I'd love to have you join our community of thoughtful traders by hitting the subscribe button below. The conversations we have in the comments section often reveal even more insights than the videos themselves. If something in today's message resonated with you personally, drop a comment with "catching the big swing," so I know you made it to the end. Your experiences and perspectives help enrich our collective understanding. If you found these ideas valuable, a simple like on this video helps others discover this content too. It's a small action that helps grow our community of traders focused on catching meaningful trends rather than chasing market noise. Right beside this video, you'll find our exploration of how to properly size your positions when you do identify these major trends. Because finding the move is only half the battle. When
failure is a clear and his own ignorance, his own weakness, or his own lack of discipline. A great loss is a painful but powerful education in the realities of the market. A great success in a man's ear that he is a genius. It is in the warm, triumphant heart. This is the great recurring tragedy in the life of any spectator to this grim cycle, his greatest and most catastrophic downfall. It reveals how the very emotions that accompany a great win, the surge of confidence, the feeling of infallibility, the hunger for an even greater prize, are the ones that relax a man's discipline and push him toward the abyss of a new and even more devastating ruin. This simple text on the mind of a master speculator. This is of a stock up a great and successful campaign. He is for that moment a king. He has not validated himself in the same way. He experiences a state of profound mental intoxication. The powerful and addictive emotions of triumph and validation flood his mind. He feels that he has not just analyzed. This feeling of infallibility begins to believe that the laws of the market, the laws of the plane of understanding. The first casualty of this new state of mind is the speculator's most essential and protective quality, his humility. The true professional, even at the height of his powers, maintains a deep and abiding humility before the market. He knows that he is a student, and the market is his teacher. He knows that his success was a product not just of his own skill, but of being in harmony with the great, impersonal force of the prevailing trend. He is grateful for his success, but he does not take all the credit for it. The man who has been seduced by his own victory, however, loses this perspective. He begins to believe that the market's trend was not a force that he correctly diagnosed and followed, see himself as the master. This subtle but profound shift in mindset is to listen only to the sound of his own applause, his own time-tested rules. The entire science of These rules are forged in the fire of losses, and they are designed to protect a speculator from his own human weakness. These are the tools of a fallible man who respects the market crutches that he no longer needs. They are for the amateurs, for the novices, for the man he used to be. He is a genius now, and a genius would dictate. He is no longer risking a small, calculated fraction of his capital. He is making massive bets, confident that his judgment cannot be wrong. He becomes lax with his stop losses. He holds on to a small loss, believing his genius will be vindicated and the trade will turn around. He begins to make exceptions to his own ironclad laws, telling himself that this time is different. This time is different. He has already paid for the expensive lesson that will soon teach him it is not. The desire that drove his successful campaign was a definite and specific one: to profit from a single, well-analyzed market move. Now, with a great fortune in his pocket does not satisfy a man. It often only whets his appetite for a hunter, waiting for the next perfect opportunity to present itself. He now feels the need to force the will soon disabuse him of this mission. This entire tragic cycle was perfectly illustrated in Livermore's own career after his monumental success in the panic of 1907. He emerged from that crash a legend, the great bear of Wall Street, a multimillionaire who had proven his genius to the entire world. He was at the absolute peak of his powers, and his confidence was this very confidence, this hubris, that led him directly and swiftly to his next great ruin in the cotton market. He felt the need to conquer a new world, to prove that his genius was not confined to the stock market. He would become the cotton king. He began to build a position in cotton that was, by any rational standard, reckless for a speculator, carefully probing the market and managing his risk. He was a would-be emperor, attempting to corner a global commodity market through the sheer force of his own capital and his own will. He was not trading the market, he was trying to be the market. This brings us to another subtle and dangerous trap that is set by great mention of other powerful men. He has invited his pack. This can be a fatal development for us on his own unfiltered reading of the tape. Men. This is precisely what happened to Livermore in the cotton market. Percy Thomas. He allowed his own judgment to be subordinated to the genius, and this makes him uniquely vulnerable to the flattery, and he has forgotten that on Wall Street there are no friends is a subtle perversion of the desire to win a winner who, after a long and triumphant advance to a massive position. The market, been humbled by failure, might see this as a warning, a signal to take some profits off the table. But the man who has been intoxicated by his own success, but by a prideful and aggressive desire to not. This is the psychological trigger for the most into a major reversal. It is the pride that comes before the position that a speculator's character is most severely tested than the emotions after a defeat. It is for this reason a return to serves as a vital cold water through his own success, is now perfectly positioned for his next great ruin. He is over-leveraged, his position is too large, his mind is clouded by ego, and his discipline has been relaxed to destroy him. All that is required is for it to do what it always does. Now in this weakened and overextended state, this the fortune that took a year of brilliant speculative success. It is the diagnosis of the disease. It is the anatomy of how a great victim. Success is a more dangerous intoxicant than failure. Success is a sweet poison sung by a great and triumphant. They are more dangerous than any bear raid or market panic, for they are an enemy that comes from within. He must learn the far more difficult and more important art of how to handle the psychological aftermath of having made it. If the seduction of great success is the most subtle and dangerous poison on Wall Street, then the only antidote is a cold, hard, and deliberate dose of intellectual discipline. The speculator who has been false, he must see in the failures of a for himself. This is not a morbid exercise, it is an act of profound realism. This practice keeps his mind grounded. It prevents the temporary feeling of infallibility from hardening into a permanent and dangerous state of arrogance. He knows that the market is always waiting to humble the man who has forgotten his place in the great scheme of things. The third act, which flows directly from the first two, is the immediate and fervent reinforcement of his own trading rules. The amateur, flush with victory, believes he has transcended the need for rules. The professional knows that this is the moment when the rules are more important than ever. The speculator who has won a great fortune must, at that very moment, take out his written list of principles, his rules for risk management, for position sizing, for entries and exits, and he must read them as if for the first time. Adhere to these rules on his very next trade with the same rigid discipline he used when he was starting out with a small and precious stake. He must commit to treating his next opportunity as if it were his first. This is a powerful act of mental discipline. It is a recognition that the principles of sound speculation are universal and unchanging. They apply to the man with $10 million. The sixth act occurs when the speculator, his mind now clear and his nerve massive bet designed to prove that his genius, it must be a small, cautious, and exploratory probe. This is the ultimate test of his discipline. The final proof that he has not been permanently engages with the market from a position of mental and financial safety and is not yet right. Often begins to believe that his genius is universal. He is seduced by the idea that he will in venture capital. This is of success in one field of the stories of brilliant into businesses that they did mustard. Has the wisdom. He respects the eighth act is the back. The market its opportunities exist. The undisciplined speculator, now a man of great wealth and with a mind that is addicted to excitement, finds this state. He will make foolish trades in a dead market, not for the profit, but none exist. This is the path back to ruin. The professional, by contrast, become part of the market cycle. To be right. And being right often requires long periods of doing nothing at all. This brings us to the final and most. It is the victory of character over ego. It is the triumph of discipline over. It is the quiet and often lonely work of remaining a humble student in the face of a world that is calling you a master. The speculator who has learned how to do this, who has created a definite method for managing not just his capital but also his own triumphant human nature, is the one who has achieved the highest and most difficult level of mind. He has learned that failure is a teacher, but that this fundamental truth is the bedrock upon which the bucket shops and the unforgiving arena of Wall Street, many approach the market seeking a magic formula, a secret key to unlock guaranteed profits. They hunt for tips, for whispers, for anything that might spare them the effort of thinking for themselves. Liver Livermore's path was different. It was a relentless pursuit of a method, an approach grounded in the observable facts of it is a story being told one tick at a time. The great movements, the ones that carry the potential for it, by periods of preparation, by the unmistakable signs of pressure building beneath the surface. The challenge for the speculator is not to predict. It feels raw station. The amateur seeks bargains. This is one of the most fundamental and costly. Logic was the polar opposite, but a confirmation of strength. It was the mark that the line of least a stock should be worth. This is not a matter of the stock market or wrong with a hurricane. And still lose your entire. Their first rule of engagement is to align your speculator by fighting the trend, and riding it. The evidence suggests that it has reached its conclusion. This is pivotal points, as he called months in a narrow ring of accumulation of the trade is wrong, and the position must be, and is now breaking out at 61. The price is irrelevant. The behavior is everything. The stock market today has happened. Fear, hope, greed. The geometry of the market repeats because the emotions of its participants are cyclical. The task is to learn these patterns. It represents a transition from a equilibrium. The breakout signifies that one side has won in force, not against it. But what constitutes it? It suggests a lack of conviction are involved and that the move has genuine trades to $47 on volume that is 5 or 10 times. This is no longer content to accumulate, and this aggressive buying is what ignites the major trend. After the initial breakout, the stock should hold its. It is a failed breakout. This is a clear profit. Almost immediately, a stock that is breaking out properly should not waffle or hesitate. The move should have velocity. If you enter a position and it does nothing for days or drifts against you, you're likely wrong. Get out. As a trial, you place a small initial doll to sit in cash. The market. He understood that his capital trade for action was a key tenet. The logical, there is no trade. It is that simple. Of a stock that has gone against you is the ultimate act of hope. Wrong by the most impartial judge there is financial suicide. The amateur trader who he buys more. When it drops to $40, he is trying to force the market to prove him right. He is fighting the tape, and the tape always wins. The professional speculator does the opposite. The position initial entry was flawed. It's something most traders struggle to maintain. Falling time on this specific stock, it would have removed transformed trade. In speculation, hope is a poison, not ego is the other great enemy. The market has no interest in the proudest of minds. To succeed, you must be willing to be wrong, to take small losses, and to admit mistakes quickly. The great bull markets of his time were where these principles were proven on a grand scale. He would identify the leading groups, the sectors showing the most strength relative to the overall market. Then he would wait for the individual leaders within those groups to form proper bases and everything that moved. He was a specialist, focusing only on the strongest stocks and the strongest groups in a market that was itself strong. This layering of probabilities is what gave him his edge. He was always placing his bets on the horse that was already leading the race. Conversely, in bear markets, side pivotal points, moments when stocks would break it all because he broke one of his own. Thomas Livermore's judgment. Livermore took us as his rules demand. The experience was devastating, but the lesson was invaluable. Never again would he allow another person's opinion to override the clear evidence of the tape. The market was the only expert he would ever trust. From that day forward, his thinking Wolf. You must do your own work, come to your own conclusions, and be solely responsible for the outcome. What is absolutely essential. The market is a giant mechanism at major turning points. The market shops was formative. The quotes were real time. He was not trading stocks. He was trading numbers and their momentum. This taught price and volume. It was only the tape, and he learned its language intimately, the character of the trading. However, when he moved to the large orders actually impacted the price. This forced him to evolve his method to focus on the larger, more significant moves rather than small scalps. This is where the concept of the pivotal point. The difficult part was not audition through the inevitable minor reactions for profit, themselves on the back for their cleverness. Your job is to stay with the trend until you sell because the tape tells you it's time to sell. What was that signal? It was often the inverse. Volume might surge without any further price lose. He would conduct a post-mortem. Where was I? The refinement is what separated him from the gambling masses. Without paying too high a price for the education. This is the purpose of risk management and cutting losses small. It allows you to stay in the game long enough to gain the experience you need to eventually win one's own human nature. The desire to be right, the fear of loss, the greed for more, these are all internal enemies. To fight these internal demons, you cannot be a successful speculator if you are trading on emotion. Procedure. The market will provide you with the patient, the setup. Your job is to execute flawlessly without letting your hands tremble. This is why he often sought solitude during major market operators and the opinions of the crowd. The hot tip is the most dangerous siren song on Wall Street. He believed that everything a speculator needed to know was contained in the price and volume action. The tape told the whole story and knowledge of every participant in the market. To learn to read it correctly was to learn the secret of speculation. They were simple visual representations of supply and demand. A long, flat base was a signal that accumulation was complete and the markup phase was beginning. It was that straightforward. He was not concerned with why a stock was a great earnings report. A change in management would often only become public knowledge long. The insiders, the smart money, they left their tracks in the price, and to wait for the news is to be late to the party. The speculator's job is to anticipate. When you see a stock being quietly accumulated for months, the breakout confirms it. This principle that the action of the stock itself is the primary indicator. Forget the talking heads on television who calls with a good idea. Watch the market. Listen to the tape. Purest form of this philosophy. It demands no prediction. It's simply transforming speculation from a gamble into a disciplined business. Foundation of market dynamics and human psychology. The technologies will change. The names of the stocks will change. The seed will echo through the ages, painting the same pictures on the charts for those who have the wisdom to see. Way of asking the market a question. Is this the time? He would ask with a small, and if the market's answer was yes. If it faltered, the answer was no, or at least not yet. This is a far more intelligent approach than committing one's entire. It minimizes the risk on any single idea until it has been validated by the market itself. It is a dialogue with the tape, not a monologue. Man is bigger than the market. Arrogance was the most expensive luxury a speculator could have, a prerequisite for survival. The humility to take a small loss. And wait when there is nothing to do. This entire philosophy can be condensed into a single. Your thoughts, your hopes, your analysis. The breakout is a visible, undeniable fact. It is a piece of hard evidence. Foundation is to build it on rock, not on sand. Observing, hypothesizing, testing, and concluding based only on the data presented. It is a difficult path. Most will not have the fortitude for it. They will forever chase the easy answer, the quick. But for the few who embrace this discipline, who learn to read the story of the tape and to trust its message above all else, The rewards are without limit. This was the core of Jesse Livermore's method, the greatest game in the world. The principles for the timeless physics of the market. What has changed is not the game. Where he had his ledger, his memory, and his intuition honed over decades. To take Livermore's philosophy and translate it into a quantifiable system is to build a bridge from the art of speculation to the science of his approach. It validates it, and them under the rigorous, unforgiving light of historical data. A backtest is, in essence, addressing days in a matter of minutes to test a specific. It is the modern equivalent of Livermore's endless post-mortem analyses. But to test an idea, it must first be transformed from a concept. Breaking out of a base is a philosophy. It is not a testable rule. The machine does not understand strong or base. This is the first step in moving from discretionary trading setup. What is a base? It could be defined as a period of, say, 40 trading days where the price has remained within a 15%. It could be defined as a close that is at least one tick above the. Next, the evidence must be quantified. What constitutes a surge out must be at least 200% of the average daily volume over the past 50 days. Without such a rule, the assessment of volume in advance. Where is the stop loss placed? A logical rule would be to exit the position if the price closes back below the breakout level, the high of the old trading range. This institutionalizes Livermore's principle of cutting losses quickly when a trade's premise is invalidated. Even the market context can be quantified. A rule could be added that the system will only take long trades if the S&P 500 index is trading above its 200-day moving average. This codifies the wisdom of trading in harmony with the general market trend, ensuring you are swimming with the tide. With these precise rules for the setup, the entry, the volume, the stop loss, and the market filter, you now have a complete testable trading algorithm. It is a hypothesis about market behavior, ready to be submitted to the historical record for judgment. The backtesting engine will then apply these rules to years or decades of market data. It will identify every single instance where the conditions were met, execute the trade, and apply the stop-loss rule if necessary. It will do this without emotion, without fear, and without hope. It will simply follow the code. The output is not a guarantee of future success, but it is an invaluable piece of intelligence. The first metric it will provide is the win rate. What percentage of the trades were profitable? Amateurs are often obsessed with this number, believing a high win rate is the key to success. This is a dangerous misconception. Far more important is the ratio of the average win to the average loss. A system with a 40% win rate can be phenomenally profitable if the average winning trade is 3 or 4 times larger than the average losing trade. This is the mathematical embodiment of Livermore's core discipline. Cut your losses short and let your winners run. This leads to the most critical metric of all, expectancy. Expectancy tells you what you can expect to make on average per dollar risked on any given trade. It is calculated. To understand the enduring wisdom of a master like Jesse Livermore, one must first grasp this central and profound truth. The speculator of the early 20th century and the trader of the year 2025 are, in the final analysis, the same man, fighting the same internal battle. The exit. This is an analysis of that great conflict than ever for survival in the complex high-speed markets of the present. The game has changed. The principles and the stark observations that form this analysis are not new theories. They are the hard-won, time-tested laws and proven with millions more in profits. They are the core of the philosophy so masterfully chronicled by Edwin Lefebvre in his definitive work on the mind of a professional speculator. A link to that essential book, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, now with a unique, detailed, chapter-by-chapter analysis from Max Davidson, is left in the description below this video. This new analysis is specially designed to make the timeless wisdom of the book powerfully relevant to the modern reader. Let us more learn his craft. The market of the early 1900s was a physical, tangible, and deeply human place. Its nervous system was not a fiber optic cable, but the clicking, clattering telegraph, spitting out a thin ribbon of paper, the ticker tape. This tape was the river of life for the speculator. It was the one true source of information. It did not offer opinions or analysis or predictions. It offered only the cold, hard, and impersonal facts of price, and to a lesser extent, volume. To learn to read the tape was to learn the secret language of the market. In the brokerage houses, the customers' rooms, this information was made visible. A quote boy, often a young man at the beginning of his own financial education, would stand before a great black slate and chalk up the numbers as they came over the wire. The atmosphere was one of smoke, of noise, of the collective audible gasp or cheer of the crowd. The information itself was not instantaneous as it is today. For the speculator operating away from the floor of the exchange, the ticker was often several minutes behind the real action. This slight delay, this enforced pause, was a feature, not a bug. It made the frantic second-to-second scalping of today an impossibility. It forced a man to think in terms of the slightly larger swings. The very structure of the game was different. A significant portion of a young speculator's education was earned in the illicit bucket shops. These were not brokerage houses that executed orders on a real exchange. They were, in the simplest terms, gambling dens. A customer in a bucket shop did not buy a stock. He placed a bet against the house on the direction of a stock's price. The shop took the other side of that bet. Since the vast majority of the public loses money, the bucket shop was an immensely profitable enterprise. To succeed in this environment required a very specific skill, the ability to read the tape for the immediate, short-term fluctuations with near-perfect accuracy. It was a game of pure tape reading, unburdened by any thought of fundamentals, of economics, or of the companies themselves. This was the school in which Livermore was trained. He mastered the art of beating the bucket shops, a feat so rare that he was eventually banned from them. He had proven that he could, with his scientific reading of the tape, consistently outwit a system designed to fleece the amateur. But the larger market of his time was also defined by a profound and dangerous asymmetry of information. In the age before strict regulation, the insiders, the company directors, the great bankers, the pool operators, had all the information. The public had almost none. The average man traded not on analysis but on rumors, on gossip, and on the deliberately manipulative stories planted in the newspapers by the great operators. He was a sheep, and the insiders were the wolves. This led to the great and common phenomenon of the pool operation. A powerful group of insiders would quietly accumulate a large line of stock, then work in concert to create a public excitement, to mark up the price, and then to distribute or sell their holdings to the psychology of the crowd. Sight of a crowd gathering outside a failing bank. The emotions were the same as they are today. Fear, greed, hope, and ignorance. But they were expressed in a more direct, more collective, and less technologically mediated way. Of information so vast and so fast that no single human mind can possibly comprehend it in its entirety, longer played at a changed. The old human floor trader, the specialist, the pool operator, these are the algorithms, the high-frequency trading firms, the quantitative funds. These new players operate on a time scale of microseconds, a millionth of a second. They can see an order being that his signal has reached the exchange. They are the new. The very institutional order is no longer placed by a single man. Of tiny iceberg orders designed to conceal its true size and an invisible electronic science. A new form of intelligence has also entered the game. Artificial. They are machines that can analyze decades of price data, that can read and interpret every news story and every subject in the world in real time, searching for an edge, a pattern, a flicker of sentiment that can be traded upon. The old problem of a lack of information has been replaced by the modern trader is not starved of data. He is drowning in it. He has access to instant news from every corner of the globe, to a million different charts and indicators. This abundance of information is not, as one might think, an advantage. It is a 24-hour stream of news and opinion, is designed not to create clarity, but to create an emotional reaction. It is a machine for generating fear. The modern trader's great challenge is not in finding information, but in finding the signal within the overwhelming and deafening noise. The problem of the 1900s. And yet, despite this complete and total transformation of the external game, the internal game remains profoundly and eternally the same. Being. And the human heart, as the old book says, is deceitful above all things. The greed that fueled the wild railroad booms of the 1900s is the exact same primal greed that fuels a 2025 timeless, irrational desire to get something for nothing. The fear that caused the Great Panic of 1907 that turned sane men into when operators hit the sell buttons that ensnared the speculator of the past are the very same traps that await the trader of today in position to whisper to himself causes a man in 2025 to stare at his screen. His account. The ego that made a man in the past believe that he was smarter than the market, that he could average down his losses and prove his own genius, well-tested rules. The market, therefore, remains what it has always been, a great and weaknesses. The algorithms and the high-frequency traders of 2025 are simply a more efficient and more ruthless tool for doing what the great pool operators of the 1900s did. They are designed to trigger emotional reactions. They are designed to profit from the predictable patterns of human fear and human greed. The predator has moments of great emotional pressure, whether in the chaos of a 1907 crash, that a speculator's true character is revealed. It is for this reason that a constant return to the first fundamental principles of the game is not a luxury, but an absolute necessity for others, especially after a series of unsuccessful trades has clouded one's judgment. Scientific and unemotional approach. The great contrast between the two eras is undeniable. The external form of the game, its speed, its tools, and its players, is a world that a speculator from 1900 would find utterly alien and incomprehensible. But the internal substance of the game, the psychological and emotional battle that is waged within the mind of the individual speculator, is a world that has not changed by a single solitary atom. Therefore, the great and timeless principles for winning that area in 2025 as they were in 1900, the man who believes that new technology requires a new set of fundamental principles is a man who is destined to learn, through painful experience, that the game itself is new, but the human heart is old. The study of a master like Livermore is therefore not a study of history. It is a study of timeless, universal, and unchanged pulse. He believes that a new and more complex game requires a new and more complex set of tools. He searches for the magic algorithm, the secret indicator, the AI-driven profit that can outwit the machine. He does not understand that this is a fool's errand. To try and beat the machine at its own game of speed and complexity is to be a foot soldier charging against a squadron of tanks. The human operator cannot win on these terms. His mind is too slow, his emotions too volatile. The master speculator, the man who would survive and prosper in this new era, understands a profound and counterintuitive truth. The answer to the new complexity is not a greater complexity. The answer is a return to a stark and timeless simplicity. In this chaotic new world, the old, fundamental, and psychologically grounded rules are not obsolete. They have become the one and only true compass that can guide a human speculator through the storm. They are the bedrock of sanity in a world of algorithmic madness. The trader who tries to fight the new machine with new complex weapons will be destroyed. The speculator who uses the timeless principles of human psychology and disciplined risk management to navigate around the machine is the one who will prevail. Let us therefore examine these old, eternal rules one by one and see how they are not just relevant, but are the specific and perfect antidote to the unique dangers of the modern market. Consider the first and most important of all speculative laws. Cut your losses quickly. The amateur of 1900 violated this rule out of hope and ego. The amateur of 2025 violates it for the same reasons, but the consequences are now far more swift and brutal. The modern market, driven by high-frequency trading and momentum algorithms, is a machine that is designed to create vicious and rapid whipsaws. It can shake a trader out of a position and reverse in the blink of an eye. The speed of the losses can be breathtaking. In such an environment, a rigid and automatic stop-loss rule, such as Livermore's 10% formula, is more critical than ever before. It is the one non-discretionary mechanical circuit breaker that can protect a human trader from being chopped to pieces by the machine's inhuman speed. The speculator must understand that he cannot outtrade the algorithm on a moment-to-moment basis. To try and do so is to be guaranteed of ruin. He must therefore have a predetermined rule, a line in the sand, that takes the decision out of his own slow and emotional hands. The stop-loss is the human's only true defense against the speed of the machine. Now consider the great positive corollary: let your profits run. The amateur of the past was tempted to snatch a small profit out of fear. The modern trader is subjected to a level of psychological pressure that is 1,000 times greater. He is inundated by a constant 24-hour fire hose of news, of expert opinions, of social media chatter, of alarming headlines, and of meaningless algorithm-driven price fluctuations. This entire information ecosystem is designed to create a state of perpetual anxiety. In this state, the discipline to sit tight with a winning position becomes an act of almost superhuman mental fortitude. The temptation to take the small, sure profit and to relieve oneself of the nervous strain of the constant noise is immense. But the great law remains unchanged. The life-altering money is not made in the wiggles. It is made in the great primary swing. The discipline of sitting tight is the ultimate defense against the modern information overload. It requires the speculator to have a profound and unwavering faith in his own original judgment, a judgment based not on the noise of the day, but on the great underlying trend of the market itself. He must learn to trust the primary trend and to shut out the deafening and often deliberately manipulative chatter of the world's opinions. Now let us examine the great unpardonable sin: never average down a losing position. In the past, this was a mistake born of a simple, stubborn refusal to admit error. In the modern market, it is a mistake that is amplified by a new and more seductive force: the power of the narrative. The modern market is a market of powerful stories. A charismatic CEO, a revolutionary new technology, a movement of retail traders. He becomes a true believer. And when the stock begins to decline, when the algorithm-driven tape is telling him a clear story of distribution and weakness, he refuses to listen. He tells himself that the market is wrong and the story is right. Of faith-based investing, which has no place in the world of scientific speculation. The timeless rule to never reinforce a failure is the ultimate protection against this powerful modern trap. It is the discipline that forces a speculator to believe the tape over the tale, the facts over the fiction. Consider the great virtue of patience. The market of the 1900s, with its delayed ticker, had a certain enforced slowness. The market of 2025, with its 24-hour news cycle and its instant phone-based trading apps, is a machine designed to destroy patience. It creates a powerful psychological addiction to action. The modern trader is constantly being stimulated, constantly being shown new movements, new opportunities, new reasons to get in the game. The quiet, disciplined act of doing nothing has become almost impossible. And yet, the fundamental nature of opportunity has not changed. The great, clear, high-probability pivotal points are just as rare today as they were in 1910. The vast majority of the market's action is still just meaningless random noise. The professional, therefore, must cultivate the virtue of patience with an almost religious devotion. He must understand that the algorithms and the high-frequency traders thrive on the constant small-stakes activity of the impatient amateur. That is their source of profit. The patient professional refuses to be their food. He waits. He knows that his job is not to trade, but to make money. And he knows that the money is made by waiting for the one perfect moment when the odds are overwhelmingly in his favor. In a market that is always on, the discipline to be in cash is the ultimate expression of mastery. Now consider the great foundational principle of trading in harmony with the general market. In the modern market, with its meme stocks and its sector-specific manias, it can be tempting to believe that an individual stock can defy the overall trend. The amateur is constantly searching for this one lone wolf stock, this one company that will soar while the rest of market declines. This is a form of speculative vanity, a desire to be the one who outsmarts the great tide of the market itself. Livermore knew this to be a fool's errand. While it is true that a stock can, for a short time, move against the general trend, the highest probability, the safest, and the most profitable trades are always, without exception, to be found in the leading stocks of the leading groups in a market that is moving in a clear, primary direction. This principle is even more important in the algorithmic age. The great quantitative funds and the major institutions which drive the market think in terms of sectors and broad market trends. To align oneself with the direction of their immense capital flow is the path of wisdom. To fight against it is the path of ruin. Finally, let us consider the principle of independent thought. The amateur of the past was in danger of being swayed by the gossip of his broker or a tip in a newspaper. The modern trader is in danger of being swayed by the great global and instantaneous herd mind of the digital world. Social media, with its viral trends and its powerful echo chambers, can create a sense of overwhelming consensus faster and more powerfully than ever before. The modern tip is a viral tweet, a Reddit forum, a popular financial influencer. The pressure to join this digital crowd to buy what everyone else is buying is immense. It is a powerful and seductive force, but the professional speculator must resist it with all of his will. He must have the courage to stand apart from the digital herd. He must have the discipline to do his own quiet and unemotional reading of the tape. He must trust his own proven system over the hysterical and often deliberately manipulated consensus of the online world. In the final analysis, the great and unchanging lesson is this: the new market, with its speed and its algorithms, is a more efficient, more ruthless, and more psychologically demanding version of the old market. The tools and the players have changed, but the underlying game, the exploitation of the timeless human emotions of hope, fear, greed, and ego, has not changed by a single atom. Therefore, the man who will succeed in the market of 2025 is not the one with the fastest computer or the most complex algorithm. It is the man with the strongest and most disciplined character. They are the one, true, and final key to survival. They are the unchanging compass in the heart of the new technological storm. They are the principles that separate the man from the machine.
Thank you for joining the live.
The path of the speculator is paved with the ghosts of failed accounts, a testament to the brutal, unforgiving nature of the game. So many enter the arena armed with hope and a handful of tips, only to be swiftly and mercilessly separated from their capital. They fail not for a lack of intelligence or courage, but for a lack of a coherent, disciplined philosophy. They are playing a game of chance while the masters who endure are engaged in a serious, calculated business. Jesse Livermore, through a lifetime of spectacular victories and devastating defeats, codified the unwritten laws of this business. He did not leave behind a magic formula, but something far more valuable, a set of foundational golden rules that serve as the ultimate defense against the market's perils, and the speculator's own worst instincts. He learned that success in speculation is not an accident. It is the result of a lifetime of study, of constant observation, and of unwavering adherence to a set of immutable principles. To violate these principles, he discovered, was to invite certain ruin. To follow them was to align oneself with the great, powerful forces that govern all market movements. These are not suggestions or guidelines. They are the commandments of speculative survival. The trader who ignores them is destined to join the silent, impoverished majority. The one who masters them is given the key to unlocking the vast potential of the market. What follows is a dissection of these golden rules, the very architecture of Livermore's legendary success. They are principles forged in the heat of battle, paid for with millions of dollars in losses, and ultimately responsible for the millions more that he won. They are as relevant today as they were a century ago, for while the stocks, the players, and the technology may change, the underlying game, governed by the unchanging forces of human greed and fear, remains eternally the same. These rules are the speculator's ultimate shield. For those who are committed to a deeper, more methodical study of the principles that governed Livermore's legendary career, the essential text remains Edwin Lefebvre's 1923 masterpiece, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator. It is a book that transcends time, offering profound insights into the unchanging nature of markets and men. We highly recommend the edition that features a unique, detailed, chapter-by-chapter analysis by Max Davidson, an interpretation specifically designed to translate this century-old wisdom for the modern reader, making its lessons more powerful and accessible than ever before. A link to this essential edition has been provided for you in the description below. The first and most foundational of all Livermore's rules was to trade with the primary, underlying trend. He understood, with a clarity that eluded most of his contemporaries, that prices move along what he famously termed the line of least resistance. This was not a mystical concept, but a simple, practical observation. Prices will do whatever comes easiest. They will go up if there is less resistance to an advance than to a decline, and vice versa. The speculator's entire job, as he saw it, was to correctly identify this path and to align his operations with it. He was adamant on this point. One must not argue with the market's condition, and most of all, one must not try to combat it. To be a bull in a bear market or a bear in a bull market was not a sign of courage, but of foolishness. It was to pit one's own small, finite resources against an irresistible, impersonal force. This was a battle that could have only one outcome. The successful speculator does not fight the trend. He joins it. He is the surfer who rides the great wave, not the swimmer who tries to fight against the tide. This principle required a profound level of patience. It meant refraining from trading for long periods, waiting for the market to declare its own intentions. There are times, he insisted, when one should speculate. And just as surely there are times when one should not speculate. The wise trader is the one who knows the difference, who has the discipline to stay out of the market when the line of least resistance is not clearly defined, when pride that the amateur loses his capital, chipping it away on meaningless, unprofitable trades. The second golden rule is perhaps his most famous, a piece of wisdom so essential that it should be etched into the mind of every person who ever dares to place a trade. Cut your losses quickly. Livermore learned at a cost of millions that this was the single most important principle for capital preservation. He stated, with the certainty of a man who had seen the alternative, that profits always take care of themselves, but losses never do. A losing position is a problem that, if left unattended, will only grow worse. He believed that the first loss was always the best and smallest loss. It was a small, manageable price to pay for the information that your initial judgment was wrong. To hold on to that loss, to hope that it would come back, was to substitute wishful thinking for sound business practice. It was to allow a small, treatable wound to fester into a gangrenous, life-threatening infection. The speculator, he insisted, must be his own insurance broker, and the only way he can insure himself against a catastrophic loss is by taking the first small one. This rule is a direct assault on the speculator's most powerful emotional enemies, hope and ego. When a trade goes against him, the amateur hopes for a reversal. His ego, which hates to admit a mistake, convinces him to give the trade more time. Livermore knew this was a fatal combination. The professional, he believed, must act on a healthy and rational fear when he is losing. A fear that the small loss could develop into a much larger one. This fear is not a weakness. It is a catalyst for the decisive, disciplined action that ensures his survival. The journey of a speculator is often a solitary one, marked by the intense pressure of making high-stakes decisions alone. It is easy to lose perspective, to be swayed by the noise of the crowd, or to falter in your discipline after a series of setbacks. This is why we created this channel, to serve as a knowledge, but reinforcement and perspective is not confined to a single individual. The history of speculation is rich with masters who, while sharing Livermore's core respect for risk, developed their own unique styles. From the mechanical box theory of Nicholas Darvas, to the volume spread analysis of Richard Wyckoff, to the turtle trading system of Richard Dennis, from the deep value principles of Peter Lynch, to the pioneering trend analysis of Charles Dow, and the modern psychological insights of Ed C. Coda, there is a pantheon of genius to study. To explore this rich history, we have launched a new channel dedicated to the diverse strategies of the world's greatest traders and investors. If you wish to broaden your understanding, the link to this new channel is in the description below. The third golden rule is the offensive counterpart to the defensive act of cutting losses. It is the principle that allows a speculator to capture the great fortune-making moves. The rule is this: let your profits run. Just as the amateur is crippled by hope when he is losing, he is crippled by fear when he is winning. He sees a small, quick profit and is seized by the fear that it will vanish. He sells too early, snatching a few points from a move that may have 100 points yet to run. He is, as Livermore said, growing rich by taking a 4-point profit in a bull market. Livermore's most profound realization, the one that elevated him from a successful plunger to a legendary speculator, was that the big money was never made in the day-to-day fluctuations. It was made by sitting tight. He recounted the story of Old Man Partridge, a wise trader who, when asked for his opinion in a roaring bull market, this was not a flippant remark, it was a piece of profound wisdom. It was a reminder that in a great trend, the speculator's job is not to trade, but to hold his position, to have the courage and the patience to ride the move for all it is worth. This requires an almost superhuman level of emotional control. It is the ability to sit through the normal, healthy reactions that are a part of every major trend without being shaken out by fear. A profit, Livermore knew, was the market's own confirmation that your judgment was correct. To abandon a position for which you have such powerful validation is an act of strategic folly. The speculator must learn to be as patient with his winning trades as he is impatient with his losing ones. The fourth golden rule is a direct and forceful prohibition against the speculator's most self-destructive habit. A practice so fundamentally flawed that it was guaranteed to lead to ruin. To buy more of a stock that has already declined is to reinforce failure. It is to argue with the tape's clear verdict that your initial judgment was wrong. It is to throw good money after bad in a desperate, ego-driven attempt to prove the market wrong. He stated with the force of an unbreakable law, of all speculative blunders, particularly his disastrous cotton trade, that this practice transforms a small, manageable loss into an uncontrollable, account-destroying disaster. It is an act of pure hope, and hope in a losing position is a lethal poison. The professional never hopes his way out of a bad trade. He comes to fight another day. The fifth golden rule provides the professional's alternative to averaging down. It is the constructive, wealth-building strategy that stands as its polar opposite. Pyramid your winners. Livermore's method was to never commit his full capital at once. He would begin with a small exploratory position. He would buy his second lot at a higher price than his first and his third at a higher price than his second. He was averaging up, not down. This strategy ensures that the speculator's largest commitments are always made in trades that are already successful, reinforcing a winning one. The market itself is financing his increased exposure through his accumulated paper profits. It is a strategy built on confirmation, not on hope, but that the professional recognizes as a sign of confirmed strength. By reinforcing success, protected him from the market's most common and costly traps. He would always wait for confirmation. The amateur speculator is a creature of impatience. He is driven by a constant, anxious need to be in the market, fearing that if he is not participating at all times, he will miss the next great move. Livermore knew this hankering for activity to be a fatal flaw. He understood that the great opportunities, the high probability trades that build fortunes, are rare and episodic. They do not appear every day, or even every week. The speculator's job is not to trade, but to wait patiently for the market to give its unequivocal signal. This signal for Livermore came at what he called the pivotal point. This was not a vague feeling or a hunch, but a specific, identifiable price level where the battle between buyers and sellers had reached a decisive conclusion. It was the moment a stock was ready to move, the point at which the line of least resistance was clearly established. To enter the market before this point was to gamble on an opinion. To enter at the pivotal point was to act on the market's own confirmed evidence. This required a level of patience that few possess. But it was the key to being right from the very start. 5 times before the market was ready, burned this lesson into his soul. He had been correct in his analysis that a great bull move was coming, but he had been disastrously wrong in his timing. His impatience cost him the $1 million move he had so clearly foreseen. From that point on, he made it an ironclad rule to wait for the psychological moment, to let the market reach his predetermined price before he would commit a single dollar. The 7th golden rule was the foundation of his longevity, the principle that allowed him to survive the inevitable losing streaks and market panics that wiped out so many of his contemporaries. He would manage his capital with the utmost seriousness. He knew that a speculator's capital was his lifeline, his ammunition, his very means of conducting business. To risk it recklessly on a single trade, no matter how certain it seemed, was an act of business suicide. He was not in the game to be a hero for a day. He was in it to be a king for a career. This meant never betting too big. He understood the brutal mathematics of ruin. A single large loss can require a series of impossibly large wins just to get back to even. Therefore, he would only ever risk a small, manageable fraction of his total capital on any single idea. He used the famous story of the nervous cotton trader who couldn't sleep, whose friend advised him to sell down to the sleeping point. This was more than a clever anecdote. It was a profound piece of wisdom. A speculator who cannot think clearly and dispassionately because he is worried about the size of his position is a speculator who is guaranteed to lose. Livermore also practiced the discipline of securing his winnings. After a successful and substantial deal, he made it a habit to take half of his profits and lock them away in a safe deposit box. He knew the seductive danger of easy money, how it can lead to carelessness and a loss of balance. By physically converting his paper profits into real, tangible cash and putting it out of reach, he protected himself from his own potential for future recklessness. It was a mechanical defense against the human tendency to give back what the market has given. The 8th golden rule was perhaps the most difficult of all, for it required the mastery not of the market but of oneself. Control your emotions. Livermore stated unequivocally that the speculator's chief enemies are always boring from within. These enemies were not the bare syndicates or the inside pools. They were the 2 most powerful and primal of all human emotions, hope and fear. He knew that in the market, these 2 instincts are almost always inverted to the trader's detriment. The average man, when in a losing trade, is filled with hope. He hopes the market will turn, that his stock will come back. This hope, Livermore knew, is a poison. It keeps a man locked in a losing position long past the point of rational return. Conversely, he fears the profit will vanish, and so he snatches it too quickly, cutting short a potentially great move. This fear cheats him out of the big money. Livermore's great psychological secret was that he consciously and deliberately inverted these two emotions. He forced himself to fear when he was losing, and to hope when he was winning. When a trade went against him, he became fearful that the small loss could become a catastrophic one, and this fear drove him to cut it immediately. But this was the start of a major trend, and this hope gave him the courage to sit tight and let his profits run. This rewiring of his own natural impulses was the source of his legendary poise and discipline. The ninth golden rule was a principle of strategic focus. Follow the leaders. Livermore knew that it was a mistake to try and trade the entire market. He stated, "It is much easier to watch a few than many." To spread oneself too thin was to invite confusion and dilute one's analytical power. He believed that the real money was always made in the leading active issues. If you cannot make money out of the leading active issues, he asserted, you are not going to make money out of the stock market as a whole. This meant focusing his attention on the strongest stocks in the strongest industry groups. In a bull market, he would identify the group in that group. He learned to beware of the laggards. The amateur is often tempted to buy a stock that has not moved, believing it is cheaper and due for a rise. Livermore saw this as a fatal error. A stock that refuses to follow its own profound weakness. His trade in Chester Motors was a classic example. While the entire automobile group was soaring in a bull market, Chester stubbornly refused to advance. The public, seeing it as a bargain, began to buy. Livermore, reading the tape, saw this not as an opportunity but as a grave warning. It was a clear sign of disguised inside selling. He did not ask why. The tape's action was all the reason he needed. He sold the stock short and profited handsomely when its internal weakness was finally revealed to all. The 10th and final golden rule was a powerful injunction against the most seductive of all market temptations. Beware of inside information. Throughout his career, Livermore was bombarded with tips, rumors, that acting on such information was one of the quickest and most certain paths to ruin. The tape is the ultimate authority, and its verdict must be trusted above all other sources. He understood the insider's dilemma perfectly. An insider might tell you when to buy a stock. He might even be sincere. But he cannot and will not tell you when to sell. To do so would be an act of treason against his own associates and his own financial interests. Therefore, the trader who acts on a tip is placing himself in a position of utter dependency, a man who has been led into a theater but has not been told where the exits are. Livermore came to trust the action of the market itself so completely that he would often trade in direct opposition to what he was being told by supposedly well-informed sources. Buying it would be reflected in the price action on the tape. If the tape did not confirm the tip, then the tip was worthless, or worse, a deliberate deception. He famously advised that every speculator should write on the first page of his notebook, in indelible ink, the words, "Beware of inside information. All inside information." These 10 rules taken together form a complete and coherent philosophy of speculation. They are a system of thought and action designed to protect the speculator from the market's dangers and from his own worst enemy, himself. They are not a guarantee of profit, for speculation can never be made entirely safe. But they are a guarantee of survival. They provide the disciplines on the great fortune-making trends. This was the ultimate legacy of Jesse Livermore, a set of golden rules that remain as true and as essential today as they were a century ago. To the novice, this sounds like an impossible, almost naive piece of advice. How can one engage in the perilous art of speculation and never experience a loss? It seems a paradox, a goal so unattainable that it is dismissed. But for Livermore, this was not it was the bedrock of a profound philosophy, a strategic imperative that separated the professional from the amateur, the survivor from the vanquished. To him, never lose your money did not mean you would never take a loss. It meant you must never, under any circumstances, lose your capital. It meant your primary objective as a speculator is not to seek astronomical profits, but to ensure your own survival in the game. The market, in his eyes, was a battlefield. To enter it without a defense was to invite annihilation. The speculator's capital is his ammunition, his lifeblood. To lose it is to be driven from the field, unable to fight another day when a truly great opportunity presents itself. Therefore, every decision, every rule, every action he ever took was built around this single central tenet, the preservation of his trading stake. He understood that fortunes are not made by a single brilliant play, but by the cumulative effect of being right more often than wrong, and by ensuring that the cost of being wrong was always kept to an absolute manageable minimum. This was the true meaning of his unwritten commandment. It was a declaration of war against the speculator's greatest enemy, the catastrophic loss. This principle was not a matter of abstract theory, but of hard-won experience. Livermore's own journey was a testament to its importance. He had been flat broke several times, his millions vanishing as quickly as they had appeared. Each time the climb back was a brutal lesson in the consequences of violating his own core beliefs. He learned that the skills of tape reading, market timing, and psychological control were his entire life was the market. The speculator who is wiped out is a man without a profession. For those who wish to immerse themselves in the full narrative of this that that includes a new, detailed book's profound wisdom for the modern reader, Livermore behavior. If the stock did not act as he cut the trade without hesitation. He viewed such an action not as a failure, but they hold on, paralyzed by the hope that the market will reverse and vindicate. Small loss, left unattended, festers and grows into a monstrous one, crippling the account and clouding the trader's mind, and distorts judgment, making a comeback infinitely more difficult. This is why he so vehemently condemned the practice of averaging down a losing position. To buy more of a stock that has already proven your initial judgment wrong is, in his view, the height of folly. It is to double down on an error, to throw good money after bad in a desperate attempt to salvage one's ego. The market is providing clear evidence that the timing is wrong, yet the trader who averages down chooses to ignore this evidence. He is, in effect, telling the market, "You are wrong, and I'm right," a statement that the ticker tape has a brutal and consistent way of refuting. Livermore treated every trade as a test of his thesis. If he bought a stock expecting it to rise, it needed to rise. If it fell instead, the test had failed. The correct response was not to alter the terms of the test, but to accept the result and close the experiment. This required an almost single instance, and losing very little when it was not. He famously stated that profits can always take. The speculator must act as his own insurance broker, and the only way to insure himself against a catastrophic loss is by taking the first small one. This keeps the account healthy. It is a simple principle, yet its consistent application. To cut a loss quickly is to pay a small tuition fee for a valuable market lesson. To let it run is to risk your entire education fund on a single failing grade. This philosophy of capital preservation is effective mechanical rules. One of the most powerful examples of this discipline is that he chronicled it in detail. The method of the professional gambler is an investor or a visionary, but as a man playing a game of odds in his favor. His strategy was a masterclass in protecting capital while pyramiding. He would begin by buying a small lot, for instance, 100, then would he buy another 100 shares. He would continue strength. He was always backing a winner, letting the market itself confirm his judgment before increasing his bet. This prevented him from ever being heavily committed to a position that with each new purchase, he would immediately place a stop-loss order exactly 1 point behind it, always anchored to the latest purchase. This method made it mechanically impossible. It was the ultimate embodiment of cutting losses quickly, while giving so the paper profits he had accumulated along the way. Using Hearn's system, grew overconfident, abandoned. It was a stark lesson. Discipline is not a part-time commitment. Livermore's own system, while more complex and reliant on his reading of the tape, that the greatest danger was not being wrong, but a mental one triggered by the tape's action, or a mechanical one on a broker's book. It was the mechanism that ensured he would always be able to come back and play the game another day. It was the tool. As a speculator's experience deepens, he learns that preserving capital is not just about cutting profits from good ones. Livermore's methodology for protecting his winnings was a systematic action without a subsequent rally. In any healthy bull market, a leading stock will advance and then resume its climb to a new high. This pattern of advance, Livermore had the patience to sit through these normal reactions knowing they were part of the game. But his patience was not high alert. If a stock had a reaction but then failed to rally with any vigor, or worse, failed to make a new high, he took it as a clear warning that the buying power. This was a signal to sell. He did tell him something was wrong. The failure to rally after a reaction meant the line of least resistance was no longer upward. The stock was now a candidate for a portion of the profits he had so patiently accumulated. It was another facet of this principle was further refined, was a price level of strategic importance. When a stock broke through such a point, the confirmation or lack thereof provided his mechanical trigger. If a stock broke a pivotal point, it was a danger signal. It showed that the expected strength was not there, and it was often a sign of distribution. Points gave him a concrete rule for exiting a profitable trade. Last natural reaction became a critical support level, a lower pivotal point. If the stock on a subsequent decline broke that point by a margin of 3 points or more, it was a definitive, mechanically triggered signal that the entire upward trend was over. There was no room for debate or hope. It was a clear mathematical instruction to sell and protect his profits. This system removed his own fallible emotions from the equation, forcing him to act on the market's own cold, hard facts. The journey of a speculator is often a solitary one, marked by the intense pressure of making high-stakes decisions alone. It is easy to lose perspective, to be swayed by the noise of the crowd, or to falter in your discipline after a series of setbacks. This is why we created this channel, to serve as a constant source of these timeless principles, a place you can return to, not just to learn, but to recalibrate your mindset. If you are committed to the path of a professional speculator, subscribe to our channel. Revisit these lessons when you need them most, and let the wisdom of the masters be your guide. For a trader of Livermore's scale, the question of selling involved more than just timing and price signals. It was a complex problem of logistics. The principle of never lose your money took on a new dimension. How to convert a colossal paper profit into actual cash without causing the market to collapse under the weight of his own selling. An amateur with 100 shares can sell at a moment's notice. A professional holding 100,000 shares must find or create a market to sell to. Livermore understood that the greatest liquidity, the most voracious public appetite for stock, appears at the very end of a bull move. This is the phase of mass euphoria, when the caution and rushes in to buy, fearing they will miss the final glorious ascent. For the professional who has been patiently holding his line, this is not a signal to become greedier. It is his God-given opportunity to sell. He is not selling at the absolute peak in terms of price, but he is selling at the peak in terms of marketability. He knew he had to sell when the selling was good. He could not wait until the market turned and demand evaporated. He once recounted selling his entire line of 72,000 shares of U.S. Steel in a single day, an operation that was only possible because there was a great big market with a tremendous power of absorption. He sold into that strength, feeding the stock to the hungry public and the frenzied floor traders. His objective was not to squeeze the last eighth of a point from the move, but to liquidate his massive position with minimal price disruption. This is the great paradox of professional distribution. The very activity and strength that excites the public and confirms their bullish conviction is, for the insider, the sign that the end is nigh. The tape should tell the story the manipulator wishes its readers to see, and that story is one of strength and activity. But this is done to create buyers. The big selling, Livermore always maintained, is done on the way down from the top, feeding the stock to those who are always looking to buy on reactions, believing every dip is a bargain. This requires a cold, clinical detachment. To sell a stock while it is still strong and the news is still good feels counterintuitive to the average person. But for the large-scale operator, it is the only logical course of action. It is the practical application of not losing money. A paper profit is a vaporous, intangible thing. It only becomes real when it is converted to cash in the bank. Livermore's genius was in his recognition that the moment of maximum public greed was his moment of maximum opportunity to ensure his profits did not vanish. In the final analysis, the phrase, "never lose your money," as practiced by Jesse Livermore, was not a single rule, but a complete, integrated philosophy of speculation. It was a system of thought and action designed for one primary purpose: to survive. For without survival, there can be no opportunity for victory. It was a complex tapestry woven from threads of discipline, observation, and an almost religious respect for the market's own verdict. It was the understanding that a speculator's business is not to be right all the time, but to be right about the big moves. This philosophy demanded that he cut his losses with the speed and dispassion of a surgeon amputating a gangrenous limb, knowing that to hesitate was to allow the poison to spread. It required the mechanical discipline to set and honor stop-loss points, removing his own fallible emotions from the critical moment of decision. It insisted that he never argue with the ticker tape, that he accept its judgment as final and absolute, regardless of his own opinions or desires. And it taught him the professional art of selling into liquidity, of converting his gains into tangible capital when the market provided the opportunity to do so. These were not just theories, they were the laws by which he operated, learned through years of ruinous failure and spectacular success. He understood that the stock market is the ultimate arbiter, a realm where hope is a liability, fear a traitor, and greed a destroyer. The only allies a speculator can truly count on are his own sound judgment and the discipline to act upon it. To preserve one's capital is to preserve one's career. It is the foundational principle without which all other skills are rendered useless. This and nothing else is what it truly means to never lose your money.
Getting ready to wrap this up, guys.
The speculator who has never been wiped out, who has never been forced to confront the abyss of his own failure, is a speculator who has not yet completed his education. For in this business, ruin is the great and unforgiving teacher. To be reduced to zero is not in itself a mark of failure. It is a rite of passage, a common and often necessary experience in the life of any man who dares to engage with the market on a serious level. The true test of a speculator's character is not whether he can avoid being knocked down, but whether he has the fortitude, the intelligence, and the courage to get back up. This is a clinical analysis of that very process. It is a deep dissection of the art of starting over, of the science of the comeback. And there is no greater case study in this art than the life of Jesse Livermore, a man who repeatedly climbed to the highest peaks of Wall Street, was cast down into the deepest valleys of ruin, and who, time and again, found the strength to begin the long, hard climb back to the top. His story is a testament to a profound and often overlooked truth, that losing everything is not the end of the game, but an opportunity to begin again, wiser and stronger than before. It is a lesson in the fact that a speculator's greatest asset is not his capital, but his knowledge of himself and of his own mistakes. The principles that guided his comebacks were not complex or secret. They were the simple, hard-won truths of the market, the very rules he had often violated to bring about his own downfall. His journey is the ultimate chronicle of failure and redemption. The foundational text for understanding this entire philosophy, the very soul of his operational thinking, was masterfully documented by Edwin Lefebvre. A link to his essential work, Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, now with a unique, detailed chapter-by-chapter analysis from Max Davidson, is left in the description below this video. This analysis is specially designed to make the timeless wisdom of the book accessible and powerfully relevant to the modern reader. The first of Livermore's great descents into the abyss was a lesson in the dangers of an untested system. He had begun his career as a boy genius, the boy plunger of the Boston bucket shops. In that simple, fast-moving environment, his method of pure tape reading was infallible. He had solved the game. He came to New York with a well-earned stake and an even greater supply of confidence, believing he could apply his bucket shop methods to the New York Stock Exchange with the same spectacular results. He could not. The conditions of the game were fundamentally different. The ticker was delayed. Executions were not instantaneous. The scale of the capital was vastly larger. His old system, so perfect for its original environment, was a useless and broken tool in this new, more complex arena. The market, in its impersonal way, proceeded to teach him this lesson. He was wiped out completely. His capital, the fruit of years of successful operation, was gone. This was his first experience of starting from zero. He was forced to borrow a small stake from a friend just to get by. The lesson was a profound one. A method is only as good as the conditions in which it operates. A speculator must be a student of changing conditions, and he must have the intellectual flexibility to adapt his methods accordingly. His first ruin was the price he paid for his own youthful rigidity. His second great downfall was far more complex and far more instructive. It was a ruin born not of inexperience, but of its opposite, the supreme arrogance and emotional recklessness that can follow a massive historic success. In the Great Panic of 1907, Livermore had cemented his legend. He had correctly anticipated the crash and, by selling the market short, had accumulated a fortune of several $1 million. He was the great bear of Wall Street, a man who had looked into the financial abyss and had emerged a king. It was this very success that laid the foundation for his next failure. A man who has just made a great fortune is in the most dangerous psychological state a speculator can experience. He begins to feel infallible. His respect for the market's inherent risk diminishes. He forgets that he is a student of the market and begins to see himself as its master. This hubris led him to the cotton market, where he intended to become the cotton king. He built a massive, dangerously large position, a line so great that it dwarfed even his most ambitious trades of the past. He was no longer speculating with caution. He was betting with the reckless abandon of a man who believed he could not lose. And crucially, he had allowed his judgment to be influenced by another man, a charismatic cotton expert named Percy Thomas. He had violated his own cardinal rule of relying only on his own study of the tape. When the cotton market began to turn against him, the tape gave him a clear and unambiguous signal to sell. A small loss at this point would have been a minor setback, but his ego and his loyalty to Thomas's bullish vision would not allow it. He held on. He began to hope. He was trapped by the psychological pressure of his own massive position. He was no longer thinking about preserving his capital. He was thinking only about being proven right. He wanted to win it back. This desire to win it back, to recoup a loss by pressing a bad bet, is one of the most powerful and destructive of all the emotional traps. It is a state of mind in which all scientific principles of speculation are abandoned in favor of a gambler's desperate hope. He not only held his losing position, he began to average down, throwing good money after bad, convinced that he could force the market to bend to his will. The result was a catastrophe. The cotton market collapsed, and he was wiped out once more, this time on a monumental scale. He lost his entire multi-million-dollar fortune and was plunged deep into debt. His second great start from zero was upon him. This failure was far more painful than the first, for it was not a result of ignorance, but a result of a willful and arrogant violation of the very rules he knew to be true. It is in the aftermath of such a devastating, self-inflicted loss that a man's character is truly tested. It is easy and it is common to blame the market, to blame bad luck, or to blame the advice of others. The amateur always finds an external cause for his failure. Livermore did not do this, for he has not learned the lesson. A man who blames himself is an analysis. He pored over his record anew. He had learned that the market does not forgive a lack of discipline. Today is a new test, and the rules are always the same. Another start from zero moment came not from a trading loss, but from an external event of historic proportions. The closure of the New York Stock Exchange in 1914 at the outbreak of the Great War. In the chaotic days leading up to the shutdown, the market had rumors and fears. The amateur was gambling on the headlines, losing his capital on wild guesses about the political future. Livermore, having learned his lessons, largely stood aside. He saw that the conditions were not clear, that the tape was not telling a definite story, and in the absence of a clear signal, his rule was to do nothing. He was in cash, his capital preserved. The shutdown, which trapped and ruined countless other traders, left him unharmed. But it also left him, like everyone else, at a form of zero. He was a speculator with no market to speculate in. He was a great general with no battlefield. He did not, however, waste this time in idle frustration. He used the months of the closure for deep study and analysis. He knew that the war would fundamentally reshape the world and the market. He prepared his mind for the new game that would emerge when the exchange reopened. This period of forced inactivity was a powerful lesson in the strategic value of patience. Sometimes the most profitable thing a man can do is nothing at all. He must use the quiet times to study, to think, and to prepare for the next great, clear opportunity. The final and most tragic downfall came after his single greatest success. By applying all of his mature, hard-won principles, he correctly anticipated the great crash of 1929, and by shorting the market, accumulated his largest fortune, estimated at $100 million. He had reached the absolute pinnacle. He had conquered the game in a way no man had ever done before. And it was from this great height that his final, slow, and irreversible descent began. This last failure was not the result of a single bad trade or a single violation of his rules. It was a slow, grinding disintegration of the man himself.